All right, so this is going to be a much requested follow-up video on our Neoden YY1. We had posted a video previously of setting it up and first experiences and things like that, but today is going to be a pretty big test on it because this is what drew me to the YY1, is keeping all of our parts loaded on the machine for production, and we keep it under here in this cabinet, and when we need it, the idea is hopefully we're going to pull it out, and with not a lot of effort it's going to just restart making parts for us. So it's been sitting literally for months now, which is kind of what I expected. We do bigger runs every so often. So it's going to be really curious to see how this thing just picks up. Like all the files are in here, the parts are on it. You know, there used to be just about a day of setup every single time we went to make parts on our old machine. So I hope this is going to, you know, I'm definitely not expecting it to go perfectly. Like, you know, just switch it on and put a board in there and, you know, everything just places perfectly. It's definitely not what I'm expecting. I'm expecting to maybe have some tension issues on some of these feeder drivers. You know, the first thing we're gonna do based on other people's experience and suggestions is we're gonna break all these little rollers free on the shaft. So I haven't touched any of these yet, but basically just gonna give them a little spin, and from what I remember before, you can actually kind of hear it pop as it lets go of the shaft. So we'll see if we can hear that. So I'm assuming that probably came through on the video. You know, once you do that, it seems like you kind of get a day out of it before it, you know, kind of binds a little bit to the shaft. So just before we go to use it, we'll break all those free. We'll throw a board in. We're going to be making about 18 of each of these. You know, nothing crazy, but a fair number of parts. We'll probably start on these guys just to get the machine running again. But I've also got a buddy of mine who helps out making some of the stuff for us. He's going to be in here helping as well. And yeah, that'll be the next thing is, you know, we'll have it powered on. We'll have broken all the feeders free, and we'll show you the very first attempt at just making parts again after sitting on the shelf for 2 months. Let's see what happens. All right, so we got it all powered on, and what we did was we, just like other people have shown how to do on their videos, we break these little rollers free. So you kind of loosen the tape and then just loosely tighten it again. So we did that to all of them, and then of course the big test, and like I said, this thing's literally sat for months. So whenever the last video I posted was, since then, this thing has been just sitting inside my cabinet. So the concern for me was how these feeders were going to behave. And so you break them all free, and then you can go into manual test and you can activate the feeder banks, the peelers, I should say, sorry. So I'm gonna turn on the right hand peeler, and as you can see, none of the parts moved, which is great. And here's the left-hand peeler. And I'm just gonna look here. None of them have moved. So to me, that was a huge one that I was very curious about, was, you know, how big of a pain was it gonna be now that this thing has sat for so long? But kudos to the other people in the videos there that have caught on to that, and the solution of just manually breaking them free. And we ran them, you know, like I just showed you, you know, not just a simple click back and forth, but just run them like, so they maybe travel a full revolution or something. And so next we're gonna paste one of the boards, and we're actually gonna start with the inputs board, which has the most parts on it. So this is kind of we're just jumping right in, and hopefully everything goes well. I think that peeler thing was a good test. I also did a check, you know, for curiosity's sake, when you go in, so this is this one. So when you go into edit component and you start looking at things, the next one will look more off. So, you know, you'd almost be pretty tempted to adjust that, right? But I thought to myself, you know, these had been run and it does the fiducial check on them before it starts placing parts. So luckily, I didn't mess with it right now. I decided, this is a simple little test you can do, not super simple, but if you go into mount, we just have to wait. So go into mount and you just step your way through. So you can see that the fiducial location is way off. So we press step again, and then one more time, and you can see it detected the fiducial, and now it's actually shifted it. And once you get to that point, it unlocks these controls, and then you can scroll through and look at the parts. And as you can see now, I mean, they're like perfect, right? So I guess my recommendation is, when you load the board in from your software, I wouldn't go manually adjusting everything in the edit component screen until you do that test I just showed, because odds are you're probably not actually going to have to mess with anything. And if you set it all manually while your fiducials are out of location, then it's not going to work. And unfortunately, I also tested, you know, hey, can I go in here, run through the fiducial checks, then leave and go back into here? You know, will it keep the offset? But it doesn't. So I don't know if that all just made sense, what I just said, but I definitely recommend checking the locations this way and making sure they're okay before you edit them over here. I chased my tail quite a bit over that, so just a little tip for you anyway. And so yeah, next thing, my buddy's gonna be back here soon. We'll put the camera in the tripod, and we will try and actually run these, which I'm excited for. And I think we're just gonna step through the first parts,
okay,
until we see how it's going.
Okay.
I think this is it. Might pull out two at a time. Yeah.
Look at you, little camera.
Looking good?
Yep.
Yeah?
Yep.
So, how do I adjust the speed? I guess I can't. I would just turn the speed down and go, but I think there's no option to do that. Should we just let it buck?
I think let's hit it.
Oh, that 1.5 might be creeping.
Oh.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, it is too. Oh yeah, it's creeping again.
Yeah.
Did it already do the 1.5s?
Yeah, I don't think so. Yeah. Oh, yeah, we gotta. So, do you want to just try and peel that tape back a little more? Is that the one that was funny?
Let's see, where is that? No,
It's the red 0602.
this guy, right?
Yeah.
No, it doesn't look funny.
Okay.
Just pull the tape a bit.
Yeah. And it's the next one. Yeah. Okay.
Okay.
Going to reset this just so we don't. We're gonna start losing parts
Right,
if we
yeah.
keep letting it go.
Yeah, I see what you mean.
Give this a good. Oh, it's kind of. Maybe I probably just did that. It was kind of caught.
What's that?
It was kind of caught.
Oh, like
in the edge. Yeah.
Oh, I see. Gotcha.
But I think that was just for me. I'm just
Oh.
giving it a bit of a workout here. Put this back on. I'll see what that does. Ready?
Yeah.
Oh, that was the end anyway.
Oh.
Oh boy.
Wow.
I'm just gonna put this on the camera for a sec.
Yeah.
So the last video that I just had in there was, basically us just, pulling it out of the cupboard and hitting start basically to run circuit boards and see how it did after sitting in the cupboard for, 2 or 3 months or whatever it was. So I think in the video, that was weeks ago now, but I think in the video we had some trouble with like the 1.5 microfarad feeder where the tape peeler, the cover tape peeler, was pulling too aggressively, and it would actually advance the tape while it was, trying to just peel the cover tape. And of course, when that happens, every time any part is picked, the shaft turns, and then it will advance the tape. So it's not just an issue while you're using that part. So I think what we did was, at first, all I did was, spun the wheel a whole bunch, and it worked for a little while, but then it started to do it again. So we actually, pulled the little gear out, and I think it had, one small friction thing in it, and I think we switched it to a larger one, and then it hasn't been a problem since. Another issue we had was in the back there, the SOD 323 diodes. The needle So this needle comes down to advance the tape, and it pulls on it, and then it's supposed to retract, but it was sticking. And luckily the machine detects when the needle is stuck down, otherwise that would be a catastrophe. So we messed around with some stuff, and we felt like that lane was a little bit tight for that tape. So we tried switching it to the lane it's in now, and we haven't had a problem since. So, that's an option too. These are 3D printed, and there's obviously going to be some differences excuse me, with 3D printing. Even just the moisture content of the filament is going to affect the overall dimension of the finished part. But I gotta say, we do 3D printing here. We've got, Bamboo Labs at X1 Carbon. We like 3D printing. It's got a place, and I think they really did a good job with this. And the fact that they're 3D printed, lends itself to some customization options, which I'll go over in a few minutes. But anyway, we picked a different lane, and that seems to have taken care of that issue. And I think in the previous video, I think we were still loading the processors in this tray. And the reason why we had started doing that was because the up-cam vision was not working on large IC mode. So when you had a bigger processor on there and you tried to do vision, it wouldn't detect the edges of the processor properly. The fix for that was this piece of tape. So, it probably has something to do with our, the position of our shop lights perhaps, but this gap here, it let light through, and that caused the vision system to detect an extra edge. So the processor wasn't in place. So ever since I tried putting this up here, vision for large ICs has been working perfectly. Now, having said that, we still have some issues where the processors are not, perfectly aligned. And so anyway, once we fixed that vision glitch, we actually moved the processors into a tape feeder, and that's been working great. And it's nice to not have to obviously load all the little parts in here. But, it's still just a little bit off, and each one is almost a little bit different. And we messed around a little bit, because it would seem like they're all rotated slightly in the same direction. So then we go into the position for it in the file and adjust it, and then it would jump too far. And, call us crazy, but, so, if it was, negative 180 degrees and, 1 degree on either side of that, or 0.1 degree on either side of that was too much, we actually tried, instead of negative 180, like switching it to positive 180, and then it almost seemed like it worked better. So I think there are some math issues hiding in the firmware of this machine, specifically when it comes to rotation, I think. So when we were messing around with those, trying to tweak those processors, we changed the XY position of the processor just slightly, and then attempted to run the job, and the machine would crash every time it went to go, start the job. Moving the processor location just the tiniest little amount, then all of a sudden the job would run properly and wouldn't crash. So I do think there's some little bug hiding in there somewhere. So if you're all of a sudden, you move some stuff around, and then you all of a sudden see that your machine is crashing when you try to run it, I'd suggest trying to move the positions of some of the components on the board, and perhaps you'll have the same luck we did. Not the end of the world. That only happened to us once or twice, and it was obvious because we had only moved one thing. So we went in, changed it, and then had good luck. Speaking of rotation, I know some other people have mentioned this before too, but this rail we found our machine, this rail was not zeroed. So we zeroed it on the using the reticle crosshair, and just jogged over, and that's all we used to align it. Originally I was thinking, oh, I'm going to put a dial indicator on here and sweep it and all this stuff, but I was like, well, wait a minute, that doesn't actually even make sense. Just use the camera and jog its own motion and make sure it's aligned to this X rail. So we did that. I'm not sure it had any effect, but that led me to think about something else. And that's, just my suspicion that it's not really handling rotation of the circuit board very well from a math point of view. So, when you go to set the board up in the machine, there is a system where you go into this edit fiducial. So you pick the fiducial and you align it to it, and that's the first thing is, fiducials are like a circle, and I think it's actually very important that you properly set the center, that you pick the center of the fiducial. And I feel like that's very hard to do when you're doing that by hand with the crosshairs on a circular fiducial. So what I've decided to do is I made a different fiducial footprint, and I put crosshairs on it. So the crosshairs, you'll be able to line up with the reticle. Now, I am assuming that the silk screening process is relatively accurate, but hopefully it'll just help. I guess what I should do, now that I think about it, I should actually put those on the copper layer, so that, when the copper is done, the copper is obviously placed very accurately, and it's also placed at the same time as the center part, which is in the copper. So now that I'm thinking about it, I should probably switch those alignment marks into the copper layer. So I'm going to do that. And anyway, in addition to that, also, I did a little bit of experimenting. People are kind of, talking about, this doesn't handle rotation of the circuit board. Once you set up the rotation by picking the fiducial and then one other part in the file, that is going to set like a master rotation angle. So really, in my opinion, that's only going to be useful if, you're loading the boards in, 90 or 180 degrees out from what the CAD file normal was. So it's not going to handle the individual rotation every time you load a new circuit board in. But honestly, I haven't really considered that to be an issue, because I think when they wrote these, I think they are pretty accurate rotation wise. Of course, we know that X and Y is out when these are panelized, but I did a little test where I just threw in a whole bunch of these one after the other, and I just checked the processor pins, and these were originally set to dead center on a couple, on those rows of pins, and all they ever did is shift in X and Y. There wasn't really ever, just like you can see now, they're shifted in X and Y, but there's no rotational difference. So I tested this stack of boards just to see, and yeah, they're off in X and Y, but they're not ever off. They don't appear to ever be off in rotation. So I don't think having rotation set every time you load a circuit board in is an issue for the average user. I could be wrong. I'm not the most experienced circuit board manufacturer out there, but just anecdotally, from what I'm seeing, I don't think it's an issue. Having said that, in this initial setup of the circuit board, I think a person needs to try and avoid math, complicated math inside the firmware or inside the machine. So my other thought here is I used to place fiducials just like randomly around the circuit board, but this time all I'm doing is I drew this this drawing line across, and the second fiducial I'm ensuring is exactly parallel to the first one in X. Of course, it could be in Y as well. I drew this other line for that. So that when I go to set the circuit board up, I'm going to, you're going to pick the fiducial, and that's, you're going to accurately find the center of it. And then in theory, we should just be jogging straight over in X, and then align to this fiducial over here. And in theory, if everything's set up properly, I think that we should never be jogging in Y to find the center of it. And I think if we do that, it's going to cancel the transformative math inside the pick and place machine that might be causing a little bit of issues here and there. Maybe there's some rounding, maybe there's some decimal stuff, like, I don't know. But I'm thinking that's actually going to have an effect on the placement of our processor, because it keeps trying a tiny bit of rotation. And of course it's going to do that anyway with vision. It's never going to come out perfectly straight out of that tape. But I think this will help us achieve a better result. So we're going to do this. This is my next set of circuit boards that's going out. I'm going to change these alignment arms into the copper layer, which I'm going to have to do some rerouting. I'm going to put them in copper to be as accurate as possible to the fiducial. And then I'm going to try it, and I will report back to see if it helps. And I feel like it might, because I think there might be some little thing going on. So that's that. What else did I have to talk about? So when we paused, or when you saw the video of it running, we did about 50 circuit boards. Well, we did another 50 immediately after that, and honestly we had like no trouble. We were messing around with things, trying to make things better. We stopped at some point to align this rail. We put the processors in the tape. When we did that, the other thing we thought about trying was using a larger nozzle for the processors to see if that would help with its placement accuracy. And in doing so, we realized that the tool changer position was definitely off. And I know that other people have mentioned that as well, and it was definitely true. It was very hard to see with the naked eye, but I took some slow-mo video, like this, and we were able to watch it super slow and notice how it was hitting. And you can actually go in and set the you can set the tool changer location and parameters. I don't know what they're using for the X position, but Y is obvious that it's supposed to be like, in line with the center of the holders in the rack. So we were able to tweak that. It was crashing, but it would successfully pick the nozzle, but it would know that it lost steps in Z, which is another thing I'm happy that this machine is capable of doing. So it must have some kind of homing switch in it where it, when it says go back to Z0, it can detect if it's not there, and that's great. It's saved us a bunch of times from carrying on a job where we had crashed and wouldn't have known it. So like I said, it pulled it out, but then it would error out saying that there was a Z-axis crash. So that little feature is good, and we did have to tweak the location of that. So I'd suggest anybody with this does the same, and that's made them load and unload a lot smoother. I've got a video for that. I either somehow actually just kind of spliced it in while I was talking, if I got skilled at doing this, or maybe I'll put that in right now. Anyway, so that's that. That's basically it for the little notes I had for this video. I mean, again, like this machine, for the money, like, it's got its little quirks, but it's it's done very well for us. It has saved, in labor alone, this has already saved us what we spent on it in labor. There's absolutely no doubt about that. So, we're happy, and I'm super thrilled that all our parts just stay loaded in the machine. That's just been such an awesome thing for us. It just used to be such a pain to do this all the other way we used to do it. So yeah, I guess that's going to be the end of this update video. And obviously I've got some more updating to do on some of these things I'm going to research and try and figure out to make this thing a little better and a little more accurate when placing the processors. So, I guess it'll take some time, but I'm going to have those boards made, and then I'm going to test that theory out and see if it makes any difference. And if it does, I'll certainly update everybody. And I should mention, there was a vibratory tube feeder here. It's this guy. It's got a nice little connector underneath. I contacted Neoden and I was like, hey, because I'm changing my design, I need another 24 millimeter tape lane. So I said, like, what are my options? Like, I've got some unused feeders over here. Like, what can I do? And I said, like, hey, can I pull that vibe feeder out, and can I put some a feeder module in here? So they were super accommodating. Basically, he let me know what all the options were, like what could possibly fit, but it's all custom. So, he asked what we wanted. He told me there's 3 options that would fit where this guy lived. A 24, a 888, and a 16 and a 12 or something. So I said, well, awesome. I'll take one of each of the options to go here. And then he also said that a 24 and a 16 would fit in place of this 4x8. So, he sent it off to engineering, and they sent it back, and I forget what they charged me, but it was quite reasonable. So I ordered all that stuff. So, if I want to, I can switch out these, for a 888 or this single 24, which I need now. And then I also got the 24 and 12 or 16 that goes in place of this 4x8. So anyway, I thought that was great. And the other thing that I asked for that they didn't really seem to have was a 24 millimeter cut tape holder. So anyway, this is all custom, and I think with DHL express shipping and all the extra peeler parts we need for them, it ended up being like $300 Canadian, like with shipping and everything, to have all that done. For us, that seems very reasonable. And yeah, this just fit in like super easy. They're very easy to change. They use these underneath. They're just held in by these like self-tapping screws, and everything fits very well. So yeah, that was the only other thing I guess I could share, is that they'll tell you what can work where, and if you want something they don't currently offer, they'll make it for you, which is awesome. So again, we're gonna more and more of our parts are just gonna live on here, and there's not gonna be any more stuff that we have to hand place at the end or anything like that. So again, pretty happy. And if I have another update for you guys, I will certainly do another little video. And if you have any questions, I guess you can add them down in the comments. Occasionally I'll go through and answer a bunch, but it might take a tiny bit of time. Anyway, thanks, and I hope this is useful for you.